Christmas Claim by Zoe Matthews. Clara Crane clutched her late husband's journal to her chest as the stagecoach rattled over another frozen rut in the road. The December wind howled outside, finding every crack and seam in the coach's wooden frame. She tucked her woolen blanket tighter around her legs and glanced at her fellow passengers. There was a salesman who hadn't stopped talking since Denver, and an elderly couple who had mercifully slept most of the journey. "Silver Pass, coming up!" The driver called from above, his voice barely audible over the wind and the creaking of the coach. Clara's face was flushed. After 3 days of bone-jarring travel, she was finally arriving at her destination, which was a tiny mining settlement high in the Colorado Rockies, where her future awaited, a future that depended entirely on a mining claim that might be worthless. Jack had been so certain. "It's our ticket to a new life, Clara," he'd said with that boyish enthusiasm that had first drawn her to him. That was 6 months ago, before the coughing sickness took him. It was before she'd been left alone in their rented Denver room with nothing but debts, his journal, and a mining claim that would expire if not properly filed by New Year's Day. The coach lurched to a stop in what appeared to be the town's main street. She saw a muddy thoroughfare lined with a hodgepodge of wooden buildings. Snow was piled in dirty heaps along the boardwalks, and icicles hung like crystal daggers from every eave. "Silver Pass, folks," the driver announced, jumping down to open the door. "End of the line." Clara gathered her carpet bag containing her clothes, a smaller bag with her most essential possessions, and the tent and supplies she'd purchased in Denver with the last of her savings. The salesman helped her down from the coach, tipping his hat before hurrying toward what appeared to be the town's only hotel. Standing alone in the street, Clara took in her surroundings. Silver Pass was smaller than she'd imagined. There were perhaps 20 buildings in all. Most of them were weathered and gray with age. Smoke curled from chimneys and greenery decorated a few doorways, showing the approaching Christmas holiday. In the distance, snow-covered mountains loomed, their peaks disappearing into the low-hanging clouds. "Looking for someone, ma'am?" A gruff voice startled her. Clara turned to find a man with a star pinned to his heavy coat. "Sheriff?" "Jarvis, ma'am." "Sheriff Jarvis." He studied her curiously. "We don't get many newcomers this time of year, especially not ladies traveling alone. I'm Clara Crane. I've come here to resolve a problem with a mining claim." She tried to keep her voice steady, aware of how out of place she must appear. "My husband staked it last summer before he passed." The sheriff's expression softened. "I'm sorry to hear that, Mrs. Crane. You'll want to see the assayer, then, for the paperwork. That'd be Mr. Reed. His office is just down the street there, with the green door." "Thank you. And is there somewhere I might stay? Just temporarily, until I can make other arrangements?" Sheriff Jarvis rubbed his beard. "The hotel's pretty full with miners coming down from the hills for Christmas. You might try Mrs. Grant's boarding house, though I hear she's got family visiting too." He eyed her tent. "You're not planning to camp out, are you? Winter up here's not like down in Denver. It can kill a person who's not prepared." Clara lifted her chin. "I've come prepared, Sheriff. I grew up in Minnesota. I know about cold winters." He didn't look convinced. "Well, see Mr. Reed first. He'll get you sorted with the claim at least." Clara made her way down the slushy boardwalk to the assayer's office. The green door was faded and peeling, but a small wreath of pine boughs hung from a nail, its splash of color a welcome sight against the gray winter day. She paused to gather her courage before knocking firmly. After a moment, the door swung open, revealing a tall man with dark hair streaked with premature gray at the temples. His face might have been handsome once, but now it was set in lines of perpetual gravity, as if smiling had become a forgotten habit. He wore a work apron over a flannel shirt, and his sleeves were rolled to reveal forearms dusted with what looked like mineral residue. "Can I help you?" His voice matched his appearance. It was serious, with no hint of a welcome. Clara squared her shoulders. "Are you Mr. Reed, the assayer?" "I am." His eyes, a startlingly clear blue against his tan skin, assessed her quickly. "My name is Clara Crane. I've come to find information on my husband's mining claim. I need to file the proper paperwork before it expires." Something flickered across Reed's face. Was it surprise, perhaps, or concern? "You'd better come in, Mrs. Crane," He stepped aside, allowing her entry into an office that was blessedly warm thanks to a pot-bellied stove in the corner. Maps covered one wall, and shelves lined with rock samples occupied another. A large desk dominated the space, stacked with papers, small scales, and various tools Clara couldn't identify. "Your husband's name?" Reed asked, moving to a filing cabinet. "Jack Crane. He staked the claim last June in the North Valley." Reed's hand stilled on a drawer handle. He turned. "Jack Crane? The one they called Lucky Jack?" Clara couldn't help a small smile at the nickname. "Yes, that was him." Reed's expression hardened. "Mrs. Crane, I don't mean to speak ill of the dead, but your husband's claim, there's a reason it hasn't been developed." "What do you mean?" "I mean that your husband was known for his enthusiasm more than his judgment when it came to prospecting. He filed that claim based on what he called a feeling. I tested samples from that area myself. There's nothing there worth mining." Clara felt as if the floor were tilting beneath her. "But in his journal, he wrote that he was certain—" "I'm sure he was," Reed interrupted, not unkindly. "Many men get mining fever up here. They see fortunes where there are none." Clara reached into her bag and withdrew Jack's leather-bound journal. "He kept detailed notes. He found something, Mr. Reed. I'm certain of it." "Even if he did, Mrs. Crane, that valley gets some of the harshest weather in these parts. The claim is in a remote location. It's no place for a woman alone, especially not in December." She felt heat rising in her cheeks. "I didn't come all this way to be dismissed, Mr. Reed. I need to file the paperwork to maintain the claim, and then I intend to verify my husband's findings myself." Reed studied her, taking in her determined stance, the quality of her worn but well-made clothes, and the stubborn set of her jaw. "Where are you staying?" he asked finally. "I have a tent." "Really, a tent?" "In December, the temperature drops well below freezing every night. As I told Sheriff Jarvis, I grew up in Minnesota. I know how to handle the cold." Reed shook his head. "Minnesota doesn't have our mountains or our winds." "This isn't stubbornness, Mrs. Crane. It's suicide." "Nevertheless, it's my decision to make," Clara replied evenly. "Now about the paperwork?" For a moment she thought he might refuse. Then with a resigned sigh, Reed pulled a form from a drawer. "I'll need to see the original claim certificate," he said. Clara produced it from her bag, along with the few dollars required for the filing fee. As Reed examined the certificate, she couldn't help noticing the photograph on his desk, partially hidden behind stacks of papers, of a woman with a young boy, perhaps 7 or 8 years old. Reed caught her glance. With a swift movement, he turned the photograph face down. "Everything seems in order," he said stiffly. "I'll prepare the extension papers, but I strongly advise you to reconsider your plans. At least wait until spring." "I can't wait, Mr. Reed. I have nowhere else to go, and this claim is all I have left." For the first time, something like compassion flickered on Reed's face, but it was quickly replaced by that same remote expression. "The papers will be ready tomorrow morning. In the meantime, at least try Mrs. Grant's boarding house. Tell her I sent you." Clara, sensing this was all the help she would get from the stern assayer, answered a polite, "Thank you, Mr. Reed. I'll return tomorrow." Outside, the temperature had dropped further, and the sky had darkened with the threat of snow. Clara made her way to Mrs. Grant's, only to find, as the sheriff had warned, that there was no room available. "I'm sorry, dear," the plump, kindly woman said, genuinely regretful. "Christmas brings folks together, and I've got family in every corner already. Have you tried the hotel?" But Clara discovered that the hotel, too, was full, as were the 2 saloons that rented rooms upstairs. As dusk fell, Clara found herself at the edge of town, setting up her tent in a small clearing beside a stand of pine trees. The ground was frozen solid, making it difficult to secure the tent pegs, but she persevered. Inside the tent, she arranged her bedroll and blankets, placing a small oil lamp in the center. It wasn't much, but it was shelter. Tomorrow she would collect the papers from Reed, then find transportation to the claim site. Somehow she would make this work. She had to. As darkness fell completely, Clara huddled in her blankets, listening to the wind whistle through the pines. In the distance, she could see the lights of Silver Pass twinkling like earthbound stars. Somewhere in that small town, families would be gathering around dinner tables. Children would be dreaming of Christmas presents, and men and women would be sharing the warmth of hearth and home. Clara suddenly burst into tears. "I'm here, Jack," she whispered into the darkness. "I'll prove you right. I promise." Bruce Reed stood at his office window, watching as the first heavy flakes of snow began to fall. Night had descended fully on Silver Pass, bringing with it a storm that the old-timers had been predicting for days. He could see the glow of lamplight from the town's buildings. The hotel, the general store with its new display of Christmas candies, and the church where Reverend Thompson was already preparing for the Christmas Eve service. His own plans for the holiday were the same as they had been for the past 5 years. He would work as usual, perhaps have a quiet dinner alone, but definitely no celebration. Christmas had died for Bruce the day he lost Sarah and James in the Silver Bell mine collapse. With a sigh, he turned from the window and gathered his coat and hat. As he did every evening, he checked that the stove was banked safely before locking up his office. The snow was coming down harder now, coating the boardwalk and muffling his footsteps as he made his way toward his cabin on the outskirts of town. He couldn't stop thinking about Clara Crane with her stubborn determination and those intelligent brown eyes that had assessed him just as thoroughly as he had assessed her. She was making a terrible mistake, camping out in this weather, chasing a dream that would likely end in disappointment. "It's not my problem," he told himself firmly. He'd warned her and given his professional opinion. What she did with that information was her own business. Yet as he passed the edge of town and saw the small tent illuminated from within, like a fallen star in the gathering snow, Bruce felt a twist of conscience. No one should be out in this weather, especially not a woman alone. He hesitated, then changed direction, trudging through the deepening snow toward the tent. He was nearly there when he heard a crack and a cry of alarm. Bruce broke into a run. He reached the tent just after half of it collapsed under the weight of snow that had slid off from a nearby tree. Clara emerged from the falling structure, clutching her blankets around her shoulders. "Mrs. Crane, are you all right?" She spun toward him, surprise evident even in the dim light. "Mr. Reed, what are you doing here?" "I was passing by and saw your tent." He gestured to the sagging canvas. "This storm is going to get worse before it gets better." "You can't stay here." Clara looked at her collapsing shelter, then at the heavy snow falling all around them, her proud posture faltering. "I can fix it," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Not in this weather, and not before you freeze." Bruce made a decision he knew he might regret. "I have a cabin nearby with a spare room. You can stay there tonight, and tomorrow we'll figure out something more permanent." Clara hesitated. "I couldn't impose." "It's not an imposition. It's common sense," Bruce cut in. "No one in Silver Pass would turn away a stranger in weather like this. Not even me." Something in his tone must have convinced her. "Thank you. Let me gather my things." Together they salvaged what they could from the tent, her bags, the bedroll, and Jack's journal that she clutched as if it were made of gold. Bruce carried the heavier items, and they set off through the thickening snow toward his cabin. By the time they reached the small structure nestled among a grove of pine trees, they were both covered in snow. Bruce fumbled with the key, then pushed the door open. "Come in quickly," he said, standing aside to let Clara enter first. The cabin was cold and dark, but Bruce soon had a fire blazing in the stone fireplace and lamps lit, revealing a space that was functional but barely lived in. A main room contained a wooden table with 4 chairs, a small sofa facing the fireplace, and shelves lined with books and mineral specimens. A narrow hallway led to what Clara presumed were bedrooms and perhaps a kitchen. "The spare room is this way," Bruce said, leading her down the hallway to a small bedroom that looked as if it hadn't been used in years. A layer of dust covered the simple furnishings: a bed, a chest of drawers, and a small desk beneath a window. "I apologize for the condition. I don't have visitors." Clara set her bags down. "It's more than generous, Mr. Reed." "Thank you." Silence fell between them. Bruce cleared his throat. "I'll build up the fire in your room. The kitchen is at the end of the hall if you're hungry. I don't keep much food on hand, but there's bread and some stew I can heat up." "That sounds wonderful, thank you." Bruce grinned and left to fetch firewood. grateful for the task that allowed him to escape the uncomfortable awareness of having a woman in his home again after so long. Sarah had been gone for 5 years, but sometimes, like now, the loss felt as fresh as yesterday. When he returned with the wood, Clara had removed her wet outer clothes and was standing by the main fireplace in a simple wool dress, her honey brown hair falling in damp waves past her shoulders. The sight stopped him in his tracks. She looked younger without her coat and hat, more vulnerable. For the first time, he noticed the fine lines of fatigue across her face. "The stew will be ready soon," he said, moving past her to build a fire in the small stove that heated the spare room. Clara followed him, watching as he expertly arranged the wood and kindling. "You've been very kind, Mr. Reed, especially considering how you feel about my husband's claim." Bruce's hands stilled momentarily before resuming their task. "My professional opinion doesn't change my obligations as a neighbor, Mrs. Crane. No one should be out in this weather." "Clara," she said softly. "Please call me Clara." Bruce looked up, meeting her gaze. "Bruce," he offered in return, surprising himself. A small grin touched her lips, transforming her face in a way that made Bruce glance quickly away, focusing intently on the fire. "I still intend to visit the claim site as soon as possible," Clara said after a moment. "I'd like to hire a guide, someone who knows the area." Bruce sighed. Most of the experienced guides are working the southern mines this season, and with Christmas in 3 days, those who are here won't want to leave town. "Then I'll go alone." "That would be foolish." The words came out harsher than he'd intended, and Bruce saw Clara's expression close like a book snapping shut. "I mean, it's dangerous terrain, especially in winter. Even experienced miners don't venture out alone." "I have no choice, Mr. Reed." "Bruce, that claim is all I have left." He stood, dusting his hands on his trousers. "The fire should warm the room quickly. I'll see about that stew." In the kitchen, Bruce stirred the pot of venison stew he'd made the day before, adding more water to stretch it for 2. His mind raced with unwelcome thoughts. He should never have brought her here. Tomorrow he would find her proper lodging in town, perhaps with the Wilsons, who sometimes took in boarders. He would process her paperwork and send her on her way with a clear conscience. Yet as he ladled the steaming stew into bowls, he couldn't shake the image of her determined face or the echo of her words. "That claim is all I have left." He knew something about having nothing left, and despite his best efforts to remain detached, he found himself wondering what twist of fate had brought Clara Crane to his door on this snowy December night. Just days before a holiday, he'd done his best to forget. Clara woke to the unfamiliar sensation of warmth and the soft golden light of morning filtering through frost-covered windows. For a moment, she was disoriented, as the small bedroom with its simple furnishings felt strange to her. Then her memory returned. The collapsed tent, Bruce Reed appearing like some winter spirit in the snow, and the quiet walk to his cabin. She rose and dressed quickly in the chilly air, away from the now dormant fireplace. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a world transformed by snow that glittered in the morning sun. Through her window, Clara could see pristine white drifts surrounding the cabin and weighing down the branches of nearby pine trees. When she emerged from her room, the aroma of coffee greeted her, along with the sight of Bruce at his kitchen stove, his back to her as he tended to something in a cast-iron skillet. "Good morning," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. He turned, spatula in hand. "Good morning. I hope you slept well." "Better than I have in weeks, thank you." Clara moved toward the small kitchen table, which had been set with 2 plates and cups. "Can I help with anything?" "It's just about ready, but there is nothing fancy. Just eggs and some bacon from the general store." They ate in silence for a few minutes before Clara spoke again. "The storm has passed." Bruce looked up at the sky. "For now, but there's more coming. At this time of year, one storm often follows another. I need to get to the claim site as soon as possible." Clara set down her fork, meeting Bruce's gaze directly. "Even if I can't find a guide, I have to go." Jack wrote in his journal about landmarks to find the exact location. Bruce's expression grew troubled. "Clara, I understand your determination, but you're underestimating the danger. That valley is remote and treacherous in winter." "Then help me. Clara said impulsively. You know these mountains. You could guide me there and back safely. Bruce's coffee cup halted halfway to his lips. Me? I'm an assayer, not a guide. But you know the area, don't you? You've been to my husband's claim site before? Yes, when Jack first filed the claim. But I haven't been back since. Bruce set down his cup with careful precision. Besides, I have work to do. The mines may slow down for Christmas, but my office doesn't. Clara moved in closer. Surely you can spare a day or two. I'll pay you, of course, whatever the going rate is for guides. It's not about money, Clara. It's about practicality. Even if we could reach the claim site safely, which is a big if in this weather, what then? What exactly do you hope to find? Clara hesitated, then reached for Jack's journal, which she had brought to the table with her. My husband was convinced he had discovered something valuable. Something worth building a future on. She opened the journal to a page marked with a ribbon. Here, these are his last notes about the claim. Bruce reluctantly took the journal, his expression skeptical, but Jack's cramped handwriting was clear, detailing observations about rock formations, water flows, and something about unusual mineral deposits in a spring. A hot spring? Bruce looked up, his interest visibly piqued despite his reservations. Jack never mentioned a hot spring to me. He discovered it on his last visit, according to his notes. He wrote that the water had an unusual mineral content, different from any he'd encountered before. Bruce's gaze returned to the journal. If there is a hot spring up there, it could explain some anomalous readings I got from his samples. I dismissed them as contamination. Clara watched hope bloom on Bruce's face, only to be quickly suppressed as he handed the journal back to her. Even if there is a hot spring, Clara, what good would it do you? You can't mine water. No, but according to Jack, the minerals in the water have medicinal properties. He tested them himself and found they accelerated healing for cuts and burns. Bruce's expression looked confused. He was sure of this? Well, he was planning to build a health resort, a place where people could come to use the waters, like the famous spas back east or in Europe. He believed it could be more profitable than any silver mine, especially as the silver veins in this area are playing out. For the first time since they'd met, Clara saw genuine interest in Bruce's eyes, a spark of the passion that must have once driven him in his work. It transformed his face, softening the stern lines and hinting at the man he might have been before, whatever tragedy had turned him so inward. It's a compelling idea, he admitted. If true, it could change the future of Silver Pass. The town's been declining as the mines produce less each year. Then you'll help me? Clara pressed her advantage. We could leave tomorrow, be back before Christmas Eve. With a sigh, Bruce rose from the table, carrying his empty plate to the wash basin. With his back to her, he seemed to be wrestling with an internal conflict. Today I need to complete your paperwork and make inquiries about more suitable lodging for you, he said finally. Tomorrow, if the weather holds, I'll take you to the claim site. He turned, his expression grave. But I want your word that if we find nothing of value, you'll consider selling the claim and using the money to start fresh somewhere more hospitable. Clara wanted to protest, to insist that they would find exactly what Jack had promised. But the pragmatic side of her, the side that had survived a harsh Minnesota childhood and the equally harsh realities of widowhood, acknowledged the wisdom in Bruce's condition. Agreed, she said. If the spring doesn't exist or lacks the properties Jack described, I'll sell the claim. Bruce seemed satisfied. Then let's get to town. I need to file your paperwork and make arrangements for our journey. As they prepared to leave, Clara gathered her few belongings, and Bruce donned his heavy coat and gloves. She caught him looking at the face-down photograph on a small table by the fireplace. Your family? She asked gently. Bruce stiffened, his hand pausing on his coat buttons. For a moment, Clara thought he wouldn't answer. Yes, he said finally, his voice low. My wife, Sarah, and our son, James. They died 5 years ago in a mining accident. I'm so sorry, Clara said, understanding now the source of the sadness that seemed to hang over him like a perpetual cloud. The Silver Bell collapse? I read about it in Denver. Bruce was recalling the details of the incident. 17 men died that day, and Sarah and James, who were delivering lunch to me. I was inspecting a new silver vein when the supports gave way. His voice was flat, as if he'd rehearsed this explanation many times. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. It wasn't your fault, Clara said softly. Bruce's gaze met hers, filled with a grief so raw it took her breath away. I was the one who asked them to bring lunch to the mine that day. It was James's birthday. We were going to have a picnic. Before Clara could respond, Bruce had opened the door, letting in a blast of cold air that seemed fitting punctuation to his painful revelation. We should go, he said, his voice once again the professional tone she'd first heard in his office. The day is wasting, and there's much to prepare if we're to leave for the claim site tomorrow. As they trudged through the snow toward town, Clara found herself seeing Bruce Reed in an entirely new light. His gruffness, his isolation, and his resistance to the approaching holiday. All of it made painful sense now. Like her, he was haunted by loss. Unlike her, he seemed to have given up on the possibility of finding joy again. Clara glanced sideways at his profile, stern and handsome against the backdrop of snow-covered mountains. Tomorrow they would journey to Jack's claim together. Perhaps they would find the hot spring. Perhaps not. But Clara couldn't help feeling that something important had already been set in motion between them, something neither had anticipated when she'd first knocked on his door. The following morning dawned clear and cold, with a sky so blue it almost hurt to look at it. Bruce had spent the previous day making arrangements. He filed Clara's paperwork to extend the claim and secured provisions for their journey. He also hired a sturdy wagon with 2 reliable draft horses from the livery stable. He'd also spoken to Mrs. Wilson, who had agreed to take Clara in as a boarder once they returned from the claim site. Now, as he loaded the last of their supplies onto the wagon, Bruce found himself surprisingly anxious about the journey ahead. Not because of the physical challenges, he knew these mountains well enough to navigate them safely, but because of the strange awareness he felt whenever Clara was near. She appeared from Mrs. Grant's boarding house, where she'd spent the night at Bruce's insistence. Despite his spare room, he wasn't comfortable with the idea of a young widow staying unchaperoned in his cabin for another night. Silver Pass was small, and gossip traveled faster than the winter wind. Clara was dressed for the journey in practical clothes. She wore sturdy boots, thick woolen trousers beneath her skirt, and layers of sweaters under her heavy coat. Her hair was braided and pinned up beneath a fur-lined hat, and she carried a small bundle that Bruce suspected contained Jack's journal. "Good morning," she called. "It's perfect weather for our expedition." Bruce just grinned at her cheerfulness, given the early hour and cold temperature. "It is, though it won't last. We should reach the claim by midday if the trails aren't too drifted over." He helped her onto the wagon seat before climbing up beside her and taking the reins. The horses moved forward with a jingle of harness bells that seemed festive against the quiet morning. As they passed through the sleeping town, Clara pointed to the Christmas decorations that had appeared overnight. Garlands of pine and holly were draped along the boardwalks. Red ribbons were tied to posts, and a large pine tree was being set up in front of the church. "The town looks quite festive," she remarked. "Do they hold special celebrations for Christmas?" "There's a service at the church on Christmas Eve, followed by a community dinner," Bruce replied, "and the children put on a pageant of sorts. It's nothing elaborate, but it means a lot to folks so far from their extended families." "Will you attend?" Clara asked, then immediately seemed to regret the personal question. "I'm sorry, I shouldn't pry." Bruce focused on the trail ahead as they left the town behind. "No, I don't attend." "Haven't in years." Clara looked at him with understanding. "After Jack died, I couldn't bear to celebrate either. This will be my first Christmas without him." Bruce glanced at her, surprised by her candor. "Does it get easier?" "The grief?" Clara considered this. "Not easier, exactly. Different. Some days I can remember the happy times without pain. Other days the loss feels as fresh as the moment it happened." She looked sad. "I think grief is the price we pay for having loved deeply. I try to remember that when it feels overwhelming." Her words struck Bruce with unexpected force. For 5 years, he'd held his grief like a shield. He had used it to keep the world and any possibility of further pain at bay. He'd never considered it as evidence of the love he'd shared with Sarah and James. They traveled in without speaking for a time. The wagon followed a trail that wound upward into the mountains. The sun climbed higher, glinting off the snow-covered landscape with diamond brilliance. In the distance, peaks rose like the spires of some great cathedral, majestic against the clear blue sky. "It's beautiful," Clara murmured, taking in the view. "I can see why Jack fell in love with this country." "It has its moments," Bruce admitted, "though it can turn deadly in an instant. These mountains don't forgive carelessness." The trail narrowed, forcing Bruce to concentrate on guiding the horses safely. By mid-morning, they had climbed high enough that the trees thinned, providing spectacular vistas of the valley below and the distant mountains beyond. "According to Jack's journal, we should look for a rock formation shaped like a bear's head," Clara said, consulting the leather-bound volume. "It marks the entrance to the valley where the claim is located." "Yes, I remember that shape from when I accompanied Jack to file the original claim. It should be just around this next ridge." Sure enough, as they rounded the bend, a massive outcropping of rock appeared, its profile distinctly resembling a bear's head, complete with a jutting snout and small ear-like protrusions. "There it is!" Clara's excitement contagious. The trail descended into a small, sheltered valley, surrounded on three sides by steep slopes. The snow here was unmarked by any human passage since the recent storm. Bruce had to stand in the wagon several times to scan for the best route forward as the horses labored through the drifts. "The claim marker should be near that stand of aspens," he said, pointing to a cluster of slender trees, their bare branches stark against the snow. "Though it may be buried under this fresh snow." They reached the aspens shortly before noon. Bruce helped Clara down from the wagon, and together they waded through knee-deep snow, searching for the wooden stake that would mark the center of Jack's claim. "Here," Clara called after a few minutes of searching. She brushed snow away from a weathered wooden post with Jack's name carved into it, along with the date and claim number. Bruce joined her and examined the marker. "This is it. The claim extends in all directions from this point for 300 yards. He looked around the snow-covered valley. "If there is a hot spring here, it's well hidden under all this snow." Clara pulled Jack's journal from inside her coat. According to his notes, the spring is located 50 paces northwest of the marker, near a lightning-struck pine tree. They oriented themselves using the compass Bruce had brought, then began walking carefully in the direction indicated. The snow made progress difficult, and Clara stumbled several times, Bruce's hands shooting out to steady her. "There," he said after they'd gone about 40 paces. "That must be the tree Jack mentioned." An ancient pine stood alone, its upper third sheared off by lightning, leaving a jagged, blackened trunk pointing skyward. But as they approached, there was no sign of a spring, hot or otherwise, just an unbroken expanse of snow. Clara's face fell. "It should be here. Right here." She flipped through the journal frantically. Jack was so specific about the location. Bruce surveyed the area more carefully. Something didn't add up. If Jack had truly discovered a hot spring, there should be some evidence. Even in winter, the hot springs would melt the snow around them, creating steam in the cold air. And then he saw it. A barely perceptible wisp of vapor rose from the snow about 10 feet from the blasted tree. "Clara," he said quietly, "look there." She traced the direction of his pointing finger and caught sight of the faint wisp of steam. The spring. It must be under the snow. Together, they hurried toward the spot, dropped to their knees, and began digging through the deep snow. After removing nearly 2 feet of it, they uncovered a small, steaming pool about 6 feet across. The water was a striking mineral blue color, yet crystal clear, despite its unusual hue. There was also a warm vapor that rose from its surface, dissipating in the cold air. "It's real," Clara whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "Jack was right all along." Bruce removed one glove to feel the temperature of the water. It was hot but not scalding, with a silky texture that reminded him of the expensive mineral waters imported from Europe, favored by some of the wealthier mine owners. "Just from the feel of the water, I can tell that the mineral content is high," he observed, noting the slight deposits along the edge of the pool. I'd need to analyze a sample to confirm what's in it, but this blue color is often associated with copper and sulfur compounds that have been used medicinally for centuries. Clara removed her own glove and touched the water, her face transformed by wonder and vindication. It's exactly as Jack described it. He was so certain this would be our future. As she spoke, a single tear tracked down her cheek, freezing almost instantly in the cold air. Without thinking, Bruce reached out and brushed it away with his thumb, the gesture surprisingly intimate. Clara looked up, her brown eyes meeting his, and for a moment, something passed between them. Bruce quickly withdrew his hand, suddenly aware of how close they were, kneeling beside the steaming pool, their faces illuminated by the winter sunlight. "We should take samples," he said, his voice gruffer than he'd intended, "and make proper notes about the location and size of the spring. If your husband was right about its medicinal properties, this could indeed be valuable." They spent the next hour carefully documenting the spring. Bruce took water samples in glass vials he'd brought for that purpose, and Clara sketched the location in Jack's journal, adding her own observations to her husband's notes. The temperature dropped noticeably as the afternoon passed, and clouds began to gather along the western horizon. Bruce eyed them with concern. "We should start back," he said, packing away the last of the samples. "Those clouds mean another storm is coming, and we don't want to be caught up here after dark." Clara agreed, though he could see her reluctance to leave the spring. It was tangible proof that Jack's dream had become a reality. As they walked back to the wagon, Bruce found himself thinking of the possibilities the spring represented, not just for Clara, but for Silver Pass itself. "A health resort could revitalize the entire town," he said as he helped Clara onto the wagon seat. "As the silver plays out, people have been drifting away. But a new industry, especially one that could attract visitors year-round." Clara's face was alight with hope for the first time since he'd met her. That's exactly what Jack envisioned. A place where people could come to heal, to rest, and to enjoy the beauty of these mountains. As Bruce urged the horses forward, beginning the journey back to town, he found himself caught up in her enthusiasm, despite his usual pragmatism. The town council would support such a venture, I'm sure, and there are investors in Denver who might be interested. "We could start small," Clara said, warming to the topic. "Perhaps convert one of the larger buildings in town into a bathhouse first, transporting the water down from the spring until proper facilities could be built up here." Bruce's mind began racing with possibilities. The old Henderson place at the edge of town has been sitting empty since the family moved to California. It has good bones and plenty of rooms that could be converted. "You know of it?" Clara asked. "I've been the caretaker since they left. They keep hoping silver prices will rise again so they can sell the property at a profit." Bruce guided the horses carefully around a bend in the trail. They might be persuaded to sell now for a new venture, especially one that could benefit the whole town. As they talked, the first snowflakes began to fall, gentle at first but gradually increasing as the storm front moved in. Bruce urged the horses to a faster pace, knowing they needed to reach lower elevations before the trail became treacherous. The light was fading when they finally approached the outskirts of Silver Pass. The storm was now in full force around them. Snow swirled in the lantern light as Bruce pulled the wagon to a stop in front of Mrs. Wilson's boarding house. "We made it just in time," he said, helping Clara down from the seat. "Another hour and the trail would have been impassable." Clara stood on the boardwalk, looking up at him through the falling snow. "Thank you, Bruce. Not just for today, but for believing in the possibility. Most men would have dismissed Jack's notes without investigation." "I'm not most men," Bruce replied, then felt heat rise in his face at how the words sounded. "I mean, as an assayer, I'm trained to look for evidence. I like to test theories rather than dismiss them outright." Clara saw through his awkward explanation. "Nevertheless, I'm grateful. I don't know what I would have done without your help." Before Bruce could respond, the door of the boarding house opened, spilling warm light onto the snowy boardwalk. Mrs. Wilson stood framed in the doorway, her ample figure silhouetted against the light. "There you are, Mrs. Crane. Come in before you freeze solid. And Mr. Reed, won't you join us for dinner? I've made a venison stew that'll warm you right up after your journey." Bruce hesitated. He had planned to return to his solitary cabin to review the water samples in private, But something about Clara's hopeful expression made him reconsider. "Thank you, Mrs. Wilson. That sounds perfect after a long day in the cold." As they stomped snow from their boots and entered the warmth of the boarding house, Bruce caught Clara's surprised but pleased glance. For the first time in 5 years, he found himself looking forward to sharing a meal with others. And for the first time in 5 years, he realized he was actually looking forward to tomorrow. The next 2 days passed in a whirlwind of activity. After Bruce analyzed the water samples from the hot spring, confirming its unusual mineral composition, he and Clara presented their findings to Mayor Thornton and several prominent business owners of Silver Pass. The reception had been cautiously optimistic, with questions about investment costs, timeframes, and potential returns. "It's not just about the money," Clara had explained, her quiet passion winning over even the most skeptical listeners. "It's about giving Silver Pass a future beyond mining, a reason for people to stay, to build, and to grow." By Christmas Eve morning, preliminary plans were already taking shape. Ezra Henderson, contacted by telegraph, had expressed interest in selling his property for the proposed bathhouse and hotel. Several local businessmen had pledged initial investments, and Clara, with Bruce's assistance, had filed additional paperwork to secure the water rights associated with her claim. Now, as Clara stood in the small room she'd rented at Mrs. Wilson's boarding house, preparing for the Christmas Eve service at the church, she marveled at how much had changed in just a week. When she'd arrived in Silver Pass, she'd been alone, uncertain, and clinging to Jack's dream as her only hope. Now she found herself at the center of an exciting new venture, supported by people who were quickly becoming friends. And then there was Bruce. Since their discovery of the hot spring, he had thrown himself into the project with an intensity that surprised everyone who knew him. His knowledge of the town, its people, and the legal intricacies of mining claims had proven invaluable. But more than that, Clara had glimpsed the man beneath the stern exterior. He was intelligent, principled, and possessed a dry wit that emerged in unexpected moments. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. "Clara, are you ready, dear? We should leave soon if we want good seats," Mrs. Wilson called. "Just a moment," Clara replied, giving herself a final look in the small mirror. She had put on her best dress, a dark blue wool with a lace collar. It was one of the few nice things she'd brought from Denver. She'd pinned her hair up and added the cameo brooch that had been her mother's, her only real piece of jewelry. When she opened the door, Mrs. Wilson beamed approval. "Don't you look lovely? And just in time to see your escort arrive." "Escort?" Clara followed Mrs. Wilson to the front window, where she could see Bruce Reed approaching the boarding house, dressed in what was clearly his Sunday best. He wore a dark suit that fit his tall frame well, a crisp white shirt, and a formal tie. He'd trimmed his beard and combed his dark hair neatly, the silver at his temples catching the light. "Mr. Reed attending church? And on Christmas Eve, no less," Mrs. Wilson chuckled. "You've worked quite a miracle, my dear." Clara felt her cheeks warm. "We're business partners, Mrs. Wilson." Nothing more. The older woman's knowing expression suggested she wasn't convinced, but she mercifully said nothing as Bruce knocked at the door. "Good evening, Mrs. Wilson," he said when she opened it. "Clara." His eyes lingered on Clara for a moment, a flicker of appreciation in their blue depths. "I thought I might accompany you both to the service, if that's agreeable." "It's most agreeable," Mrs. Wilson replied before Clara could speak, "though I'll be walking with the Thompsons, who should be along any minute. You two go ahead. Save me a seat if you think of it." Before either could protest, the shrewd landlady had ushered them out onto the porch and closed the door firmly behind them. Bruce offered his arm with formal courtesy. "Shall we?" Clara placed her gloved hand on his arm, acutely aware of his solid presence beside her as they began walking toward the church. The town around them was transformed by Christmas decorations and the soft glow of lanterns and candles in windows. "I'm surprised you decided to attend the service," Clara said after a moment, "given what you said about avoiding Christmas celebrations." Bruce's gaze remained fixed ahead, but she felt a slight tension in his arm beneath her hand. "I've been thinking about what you said, about grief being the price we pay for having loved deeply." He paused, choosing his words carefully. For 5 years, I've been paying that price without acknowledging the love that preceded it. It is starting to seem unbalanced somehow. Clara squeezed his arm gently in understanding. It's not an easy thing to change. No, he agreed, but necessary perhaps. Sarah would have hated what I've become. She loved Christmas. She decorated every corner of our home and baked for weeks beforehand. She also made sure every child in Silver Pass had at least one present. A ghost of a grin touched his lips. And James was just like her, excited from the first snow until New Year's. He always made a snowman the moment there was enough snow to do so. They had reached the church, a simple wooden structure now adorned with pine boughs and red ribbons. Through the windows, Clara could see it was already filling with people. Inside the church, the atmosphere was warm and festive. Children spoke excitedly in their best clothes. Adults greeted one another with holiday wishes, and Reverend Thompson moved among his congregation, beaming with excitement. Bruce and Clara found seats near the middle, saving one for Mrs. Wilson as promised. The service was simple but moving. Carols sung by the small church choir, readings from scripture about the Nativity. A pageant was performed by the town's children, complete with makeshift costumes and forgotten lines that elicited fond laughter from the audience. Throughout it all, Clara was acutely aware of Bruce beside her. He sang the familiar carols in a pleasant baritone and listened attentively to Reverend Thompson's sermon about hope in dark times. When the service ended, they joined the crowd moving toward the community hall adjacent to the church, where tables had been set up for the Christmas Eve dinner. The large room was festooned with greenery, lit by dozens of candles and filled with the mouth-watering aroma of roasted meats, fresh bread, and spiced desserts. Bruce Reed, as I live and breathe. A stout man with a jovial face approached them, clapping Bruce on the shoulder. Haven't seen you at a community gathering in years. Hello, George, Bruce replied, shaking the man's hand. This is Mrs. Clara Crane. Clara, George Simmons, owns the general store. Ah, the lady with the hot spring. George pumped Clara's hand enthusiastically. The whole town's talking about your plans. It's the finest idea I've heard in years. My Emma suffers something terrible with her joints in the winter. I'll bet your mineral waters would do her a world of good. I hope so, Mr. Simmons. We're planning to open a small bathhouse by spring, if all goes well. Wonderful, wonderful. Now you two find yourselves seats at the main table. The mayor wants to talk more about this venture of yours, and Christmas dinner seems as good a time as any for business in these parts. As George moved off to greet other arrivals, Bruce stepped closer to Clara. Are you ready for this? Once the mayor starts talking business, everyone will join in. Clara was feeling some nervousness about it, but was also excited. I'm ready. This is what Jack would have wanted. His discovery is helping an entire community. The dinner that followed was unlike any Christmas Eve Clara had experienced. The food was plentiful and delicious. There was venison, turkey, ham, and all manner of sides and desserts contributed by the townspeople. But more remarkable was the sense of community and of belonging that surrounded the long tables. Children darted between adults, elderly couples who had clearly spent decades together, and friends both old and new, exchanged stories and laughter. As George had predicted, the conversation frequently turned to Clara and Bruce's plans for the hot spring. Questions were asked, suggestions offered, and by the time dessert was served, it seemed the entire town had embraced the idea of Silver Pass becoming a health resort destination. We'll need to come up with a proper name, Mayor Thornton announced, standing to address the gathering, something that captures the healing nature of the enterprise. Silver Springs Health Resort, someone suggested. Crane Healing Waters, called another, raising a glass to Clara. Mountain Mineral Baths was offered as another option. Clara looked to Bruce, seated beside her. What do you think? He considered for a moment. The name should honor Jack, since it was his discovery. Clara felt a rush of gratitude for his thoughtfulness. Perhaps Silverbell Springs? After the mine where the accident happened, it is a way of remembering both our losses while looking to a new future? For a moment, Clara feared she'd overstepped, but Bruce then spoke with a sincere warmth. Silverbell Springs. I think it's perfect. The mayor raised his glass. To Silverbell Springs, then. And to Mrs. Crane and Mr. Reed, whose partnership promises a new chapter for our town. As glasses were raised and cheers echoed through the hall, Clara felt Bruce's hand briefly cover hers on the table. It was a gesture so quick and subtle that no one else would have noticed it. But it sent warmth coursing through her that had nothing to do with the heated room or the mulled cider she'd been drinking. Later, as the dinner wound down and families with young children began to depart for the night, Bruce offered to walk Clara back to the boarding house. The night was clear now, stars blazing in the black sky above, and the fresh snow glittered like diamond dust in the moonlight. "It was a delightful evening," Clara said as they walked casually through the quiet town. "Thank you for accompanying me." "It was my pleasure," Bruce replied, his voice soft in the still night. "It felt good to be part of things again. I'd forgotten how much Sarah loved these gatherings. She would have been right in the middle of everything, organizing, decorating, and making sure everyone was included. She sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was." Bruce glanced at the stars. "She would have liked you, I think. Your determination, your willingness to fight for what you believe in." They had reached the boarding house, but neither seemed eager to end the evening. They stood on the porch, the warm light from inside casting a golden glow through the curtained windows. "I have something for you," Bruce said suddenly, reaching into his coat pocket. "It's not much. I haven't given a Christmas gift in years, but when I saw it—" He handed her a small package wrapped in brown paper and tied with a simple red ribbon. Clara took it, surprised and touched by the unexpected gesture. "I didn't get you anything," she said apologetically. "You've given Silver Pass hope for the future. That's gift enough." Bruce pointed toward the package. "Open it." Clara carefully untied the ribbon and unwrapped the paper to reveal a small ornament carved from pale wood. It was a perfect miniature of the bear's head rock formation that marked the entrance to her claim. "It's beautiful. Did you make this?" Bruce looked embarrassed. "Wood carving was a hobby before—" "Well, it's been a while, but when we were planning the business yesterday, I remembered I still had my tools. It seemed appropriate, given that the rock formation led us to the spring." Clara clutched the ornament carefully, moved by the thoughtfulness of the gift and what it represented. "Thank you," she said softly. "I'll treasure it." For a breathless moment, Clara thought Bruce might close the distance between them, but then the door opened behind them and Mrs. Wilson appeared. "There you are!" I was beginning to worry. Come in, come in. I've hot chocolate waiting, and it's far too cold to be standing about on the porch." The moment broken, Bruce stepped back. "Good night, Clara." "Merry Christmas." "Merry Christmas, Bruce," she replied, hoping in her what had been left unsaid. Christmas Day dawned bright and clear, the world outside wrapped in a blanket of pristine white that glittered in the morning sun. Clara woke early, her mind already racing with plans for Silver Bell Springs. She had slept with the wooden ornament Bruce had given her on her bedside table, and now she picked it up, noticing the intricate carving and smiling at the memory of his unexpected gift. After dressing, she joined Mrs. Wilson and the other boarders for a festive Christmas breakfast. The table was laden with fresh biscuits, eggs, bacon, and Mrs. Wilson's famous cinnamon rolls, their sweet aroma filling the cozy dining room. "Do you have any plans for today, Clara?" Mrs. Wilson asked as she refilled Clara's coffee cup. "I thought I might work on the business proposal for Silver Bell Springs," Clara replied, "while everything is still fresh in my mind." Mrs. Wilson tutted disapprovingly. "Working on Christmas Day? That doesn't seem right, especially when there's a town full of people who'd welcome your company for the holiday." Clara hesitated. In Denver, she would have spent the day alone, avoiding the painful reminders of Jack's absence. But here in Silver Pass, she found herself drawn to the community that had so readily embraced her vision. "Perhaps you're right," she conceded. "I could use the day to get better acquainted with the town if I'm to make it my home." Mrs. Wilson beamed approval. "That's the spirit. And speaking of company, Mr. Reed left something for you this morning." She disappeared briefly into the kitchen, returning with a folded note. "He came by at first light. He said not to wake you, but to give you this when you came down." Clara took the note, trying to ignore Mrs. Wilson's knowing expression as she unfolded the simple message. "Clara, if you've no other plans for Christmas Day, I'd like to show you something that might interest you for our project. I'll be at the assay office until noon if you'd care to join me. Bruce. Is it good news? Mrs. Wilson inquired, not even pretending not to be curious. Yes, Mr. Reed wants to discuss something related to Silverbell Springs. I think I'll go see him after breakfast. On Christmas? My, Mrs. Wilson murmured, exchanging glances with Mr. Wilson at the end of the table. Business must be pressing indeed. Clara felt her cheeks warm, but chose not to respond to the landlady's gentle teasing. After helping clear the breakfast dishes, she donned her coat, hat, and gloves for the short walk to Bruce's office. Silver Pass was quiet on Christmas morning, with most families at home celebrating the holiday. Smoke rose from chimneys in lazy spirals, and the occasional sound of children's laughter drifted through open windows. The main street, normally busy with miners and merchants, was nearly deserted, tracks in the snow indicating only a few early risers had ventured out. When Clara reached the assay office, she found the green door unlocked. She knocked anyway, then pushed it open. Bruce? In the back, came his voice. She followed it to a room behind the main office that she hadn't seen on her previous visits. It appeared to be a laboratory of sorts, with shelves of chemicals, scales, crucibles, and various other instruments. Bruce stood at a workbench, peering intently at something through a magnifying glass. He looked up as she entered. Merry Christmas, Clara. I'm glad you came. Merry Christmas, she replied, noticing he looked more relaxed than she'd yet seen him, dressed in a casual shirt with the sleeves rolled up, rather than his usual formal attire. Your note said you had something to show me? Bruce just gestured toward the workbench. I've been analyzing the mineral content of the spring water more thoroughly. The results are remarkable. Clara moved closer, looking at the array of small dishes and testing equipment spread across the bench. In what way? The water contains an unusual combination of minerals. Sulfur compounds, yes, but also lithium, magnesium, and several trace elements that are known for their therapeutic properties. Bruce's mind was alight with scientific enthusiasm. I've cross-referenced with reports from European spas that have documented healing effects. Our spring's composition is most similar to those in Baden-Baden, Germany, which have been famous for centuries. That's pleasing news, Clara said, sharing his excitement. This confirms everything Jack believed about the spring's potential. There's more, Bruce continued, leading her to a side table where several maps were spread out. I've been reviewing surveys of the area around your claim. The geological formations suggest there may be more than one hot spring in that valley. If we explore carefully, we might find an entire network of thermal waters. Each spring could have different mineral compositions. Clara bent over the maps, her shoulder brushing against Bruce's as he pointed out specific features. That would make Silverbell Springs even more valuable as a health destination. Different waters for different ailments. Exactly. And I've been thinking about the Henderson property as our first development site. Bruce shuffled through the papers, producing a rough floor plan. The main house could be converted to guest rooms fairly easily. The large barn behind it would make an excellent bathhouse with multiple pools. Clara studied the plans, impressed by the thought Bruce had already put into the project. This is brilliant work, Bruce. You must have been up all night. He shrugged, looking almost sheepish. I find I'm energized by the possibilities. It's been a long time since I felt this way about anything. Their gaze met, and Clara saw in him both excitement and vulnerability that deeply touched her. This project wasn't just business for Bruce. It symbolized something more personal, a way to reconnect with the passionate, engaged man he once was before tragedy changed his life. I'm glad, she said softly, and grateful for your expertise. I wouldn't know where to begin with analyzing water samples or reading geological surveys. And I wouldn't have thought to look for a hot spring in the first place. It seems we make a good team, Mrs. Crane. Clara, she reminded him, if we're to be business partners, I think first names are appropriate. Clara, he repeated, her name sounding different somehow when spoken in his deep voice. A silence fell between them, broken only when the town church bells began to ring, announcing the Christmas Day service. I've kept you from the service, Bruce said, glancing at the clock on the wall. I didn't mean to take up your entire Christmas morning with business. I don't mind, Clara assured him. This is important work. She hesitated, then added impulsively, but perhaps we could continue our discussion over Christmas dinner? Mrs. Wilson invited me to join her family, and she specifically mentioned that you would be welcome as well. Bruce appeared momentarily taken aback by the invitation. Then, to Clara's delight, he spoke softly. I'd like that. Thank you. As they gathered the maps and notes to continue their work later, Clara found herself looking forward to the holiday dinner with an anticipation she hadn't felt for Christmas since Jack's death. There was something about Bruce's company, his quiet strength and unexpected moments of warmth, that made her feel less alone in the world. Later that afternoon, as they sat around the Wilsons' crowded dinner table alongside several other boarders and neighbors, Clara observed Bruce gradually relaxing into the festive atmosphere. He was seated beside her, their elbows occasionally brushing as they reached for dishes being passed around the table. Each brief contact sent a small thrill through her, a sensation she hadn't experienced in a long time. Now, Mr. Reed, Mrs. Wilson said as she served him a second helping of roast turkey, Clara tells me you've been working all morning on Christmas Day. Surely even assayers deserve a holiday. Bruce smiled more openly than Clara had yet seen. It wasn't exactly work, Mrs. Wilson. More of a passion project. A passion project, Mrs. Wilson repeated as she glanced between Bruce and Clara. Well, I'm pleased to see you taking an interest in new ventures, Mr. Reed. The town has missed your involvement these past years. I'm beginning to think I have too, Bruce replied quietly. After dinner, as the gathering moved to the parlor for coffee and dessert, Bruce drew Clara aside. I have another Christmas gift for you, though this one is more practical than sentimental. From his coat pocket, he produced a small leather-bound book. It's a guide to the medicinal properties of mineral waters, written by a German doctor who studied the spas of Europe. I thought it might be useful as we develop Silver Bell Springs. Clara took the book, touched by the thoughtfulness of the gift. Thank you, Bruce. This will be invaluable. She paused, then admitted, I feel terrible that I have nothing to give you in return. You already have, he said simply. You've given me a reason to look forward, Clara. After 5 years of living in the past, that's no small thing. Their gazes held, and Clara felt something shift between them. There was a connection that went beyond their business partnership or growing friendship. Before she could respond, however, Mrs. Wilson called them to join the others for a round of Christmas carols around the piano. The evening passed pleasantly, filled with music, laughter, and the warm camaraderie that seemed to be a hallmark of Silver Pass. As the hour grew late and guests began to depart, Bruce offered to walk Clara back to the boarding house, though it was merely across the street. Outside, the night was clear and cold, stars brilliant in the black sky. They paused on the boardwalk, neither quite ready to end the evening. Thank you for including me today, Bruce said. It's been the best Christmas I've had in a very long time. For me as well, Clara admitted. I wasn't sure how I would feel, celebrating without Jack. But being here with new friends and this exciting project ahead, I think he would be pleased. From everything you've told me about him, I believe he would. He sounds like a man who valued joy and possibility. He was, Clara said softly. Then gathering her courage, she added, and I think he would approve of you as my business partner. He always said that character mattered more than anything in the people you choose to work with. And what do you think of my character, Clara? Bruce asked, his voice low. Clara looked up at him, at the strong, serious face now softened by the moonlight. I think you're a man of integrity, intelligence, and surprising kindness. A man who has carried his grief like a shield, but is finally finding the courage to set it down. Something flickered on Bruce's face, showing the truth in her words. For a moment she thought he might reach for her, might bridge the small distance between them. Instead, he said quietly, Good night, Clara. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, Bruce, she replied as she turned to enter the boarding house. That night, as Clara prepared for bed, she found herself thinking not of the past and what she had lost, but of the future and what might be possible. As she drifted towards sleep, Clara realized that in coming to Silver Pass to honor Jack's dream, she had inadvertently opened the door to a new dream of her own, one that included a serious-faced assayer and healing waters that might mend more than just physical ailments. The week between Christmas and New Year's Day passed in a flurry of activity. Clara and Bruce worked tirelessly on their plans for Silverbell Springs, meeting with potential investors, drafting formal proposals, and making preliminary sketches of how the Henderson property might be converted into a health resort. News of their venture had spread quickly through Silver Pass and beyond. Mayor Thornton had telegraphed contacts in Denver, and by December 28th, they had received inquiries from several interested parties, including a doctor from Colorado Springs who specialized in therapeutic treatments. "Things are moving faster than I expected," Clara remarked to Bruce as they sat in his office, reviewing their growing stack of correspondence. "It's a bit overwhelming." Bruce looked up from the letter he was reading. "Are you having second thoughts?" "Not at all," Clara assured him quickly. "I'm just realizing how much there is to do. Building renovations, water transportation systems, hiring staff, creating treatment regimens." She sighed, running a hand over her neatly pinned hair. "I know nothing about running a health resort, Bruce." "What if I can't do this?" Bruce set down his papers, his expression serious. "Clara, in the short time I've known you, I've seen you travel alone to a strange town in winter, camp in a snowstorm, hike through drifts to find a hidden hot spring, and convince an entire community to invest in your vision. If anyone can make Silverbell Springs a success, it's you." Warmth spread through Clara at his words of confidence. "Thank you, but I couldn't do any of it without your help." "We make a good team," Bruce said simply. Those simple words gave Clara that now familiar flutter in her chest. Since Christmas, something had been changing between them, subtle but undeniable. Their conversations flowed more easily. Their silences had grown comfortable. And increasingly, Clara found herself aware of Bruce as a man rather than merely a business partner. The office door opened, interrupting the moment, and Sheriff Jarvis stepped in, stamping snow from his boots. "Good afternoon, Bruce, Mrs. Crane," he greeted them. "I've got a telegram for you, ma'am." It just came in from Denver. Clara took the folded paper with a curious frown, wondering why the sheriff had opted to deliver the telegram. "Thank you, Sheriff." As Sheriff Jarvis departed, Clara opened the telegram and quickly scanned the brief message. "It's from Mr. Henderson," she said, looking up at Bruce. "He's accepted our offer for the property. He'll be sending the deed transfer papers by post to be signed on New Year's Day." Bruce's face broke into a full smile, transforming his features. "That's excellent news." "The timing couldn't be better. You can sign both the claim renewal and the property deed on the same day." "New Year's Day," Clara repeated softly. "A fitting time for new beginnings, isn't it?" Before Bruce could respond, the door burst open again, this time admitting a young boy of perhaps 12, his face red with exertion and excitement. "Mr. Reed, there's men hurt at the Blackwood mine." "Cave in," he gasped. "Doc Peterson says to tell you to come quick, and to bring the lady with the healing waters if you can find her." Bruce was on his feet instantly. "How bad is it?" "There are 3 men trapped. They got him out, but they're hurt bad. Doc says he needs help." "Tell him we're coming right away," Bruce instructed, already reaching for his coat. "Clara, do we have samples of the spring water here?" Clara moved quickly to collect the bottles they had brought back from their expedition. "Will it really help?" "I don't know," Bruce admitted as they hurried to follow the boy. "But Dr. Peterson has been interested in mineral therapies for years. He must think it's worth trying." They rushed through town toward the small building that served as Silver Pass's clinic. Inside, they found organized chaos. 3 miners lay on beds, attended by Dr. Peterson and several assistants. The air was thick with the metallic smell of blood and the earthy scent of rock dust. Dr. Peterson, a bespectacled man with a silver beard, looked up as they entered. "Thank you for coming so quickly. We have crush injuries, lacerations, and I fear internal bleeding in the worst case." Clara's stomach lurched at the sight of the injured men, but she forced herself to step forward, holding out the bottles of mineral water. "I brought the samples from the hot spring. How can we help?" The doctor directed them to the nearest miner, a young man with a badly mangled arm. We need to clean these wounds thoroughly before I can assess the damage. The mineral content of your spring water might help prevent infection, based on what Bruce has told me of its composition. Clara and Bruce worked side by side, following the doctor's instructions. They carefully cleaned wounds, applied compresses soaked in the mineral water, and assisted as Dr. Peterson set bones and stitched lacerations. The work was grim but necessary, and Clara found herself drawing strength from Bruce's calm presence beside her. Hours passed, and gradually, the crisis atmosphere subsided. Two of the miners were stable, their wounds treated and bandaged. The third, an older man named Dan Sullivan, remained unconscious, his breathing shallow. "I've done all I can for him," Dr. Peterson said quietly, washing his hands in a basin. "If he survives the night, he has a chance." As evening fell, Bruce insisted Clara take a break, sending her to the nearby hotel for dinner while he remained with the doctor. When she returned, she found him sitting beside Dan Sullivan's bed, his face drawn with fatigue. "Is there any change?" she asked softly, handing him the coffee she'd brought. Bruce shook his head. "Not yet. The other two are resting comfortably, though." He pointed to a nearby bed. "Philip even asked for something to eat, which Dr. Peterson says is a good sign." Clara pulled a chair beside Bruce's, settling in for what might be a long night. "You don't have to stay," he told her. "I can keep watch." "I want to," she replied simply. And it was true. In the midst of this unexpected crisis, she somehow found another layer of connection with Bruce. Seeing him work alongside the doctor, his hands steady and his voice calm as he spoke to the injured miners, had revealed yet another facet of the complex man she was coming to care for deeply. They sat together. The only sounds were the breathing of the sleeping miners and the occasional creak of the cold building as it settled throughout the night. Eventually, exhaustion overcame them both. Clara drifted to sleep, her head coming to rest on Bruce's shoulder. She woke some time later to find Bruce gently shaking her arm. "Clara," he whispered, "Dan Sullivan's waking up." Indeed, the older miner was stirring, his eyelids fluttering. Dr. Peterson, who had been dozing in a chair across the room, hurried over to examine him. "Dan? Can you hear me?" the doctor asked, checking the man's pulse. The miner's eyes opened fully, confusion giving way to recognition. "Doc? What happened?" "There was a cave-in at the Blackwood. You've been unconscious for several hours. How do you feel?" Dan considered this, then, remarkably, attempted to sit up. "My head hurts something fierce, and my leg, but I reckon I'm better than I ought to be, considering." Dr. Peterson helped him ease back against the pillows, astonishment evident on his face. "You had significant injuries, Dan. I was concerned you might not wake at all." "Guess it wasn't my time," the miner replied, his gaze moving to Clara and Bruce. "Who are they?" "Friends who helped with your treatment," Dr. Peterson explained. "Mrs. Crane provided a special mineral water that we used to clean and treat your wounds." Dan focused his attention on her. "I'm obliged to you, ma'am. Whatever you used, it seems to have done the trick." As dawn broke, news of Dan's remarkable recovery spread through Silver Pass. Dr. Peterson examined all three miners again, his skepticism gradually giving way to cautious optimism. "I cannot definitively attribute their improvement to the mineral water alone," he told Clara and Bruce as they prepared to leave the clinic. "But I've never seen crush injuries respond so well to treatment. The reduced inflammation alone is noteworthy." "Would you be interested in conducting more formal studies once Silver Bell Springs is established?" Clara asked the doctor. "We'd welcome scientific validation of the water's properties." Dr. Peterson's interest was apparent. "Most certainly. I've long been intrigued by the therapeutic claims of European spas. This could represent a significant advancement in our understanding of mineral therapies." As they stepped outside the clinic into the crisp morning air, Clara was surprised to find a small crowd gathered. Word of Dan's recovery had spread quickly, and townspeople had come to hear about the miracle water, as they were already calling it. Mayor Thornton pushed through to greet them. "Mrs. Crane? Mr. Reed, is it true? The miners are recovering because of your hot spring?" Bruce chimed in. "Remember, Dr. Peterson cautions against drawing definitive conclusions from a single case, Mayor. Scientific validation will take time and proper study. But the water helped, the mayor pressed. Clara turned to him. It appears to have beneficial properties, yes, which makes our development of Silver Bell Springs all the more important. This statement was met with enthusiastic agreement from the gathered townspeople. What had been cautious interest before was now transforming into genuine excitement about the project. As the crowd dispersed, Bruce placed a gentle hand on Clara's arm. You should get some rest. It's been a long night. Clara agreed, suddenly aware of her exhaustion. What about you? I need to write up detailed notes about the treatments while everything is fresh in my mind. Scientific documentation, as you suggested to Dr. Peterson. But I need to rest afterward. Partners look after each other, Clara reminded him. I'll hold you to that promise. The remaining days before New Year's passed in a whirlwind of activity. News of the miners' recovery using the miracle water spread beyond Silver Pass to neighboring communities. Each day brought new visitors to town, such as curious locals, a journalist from Denver, and even a representative from a medical college in the East. Clara found herself at the center of attention, telling and retelling the story of Jack's discovery and their plans for Silver Bell Springs. Bruce was by her side throughout, lending his scientific expertise and quiet authority to their presentations. By New Year's Eve, anticipation in Silver Pass had reached a fever pitch. The town council had organized a special celebration in the community hall, not just to welcome 1880, but to celebrate the new beginning that Silver Bell Springs represented for the declining mining town. Clara stood before her mirror in Mrs. Wilson's boarding house, making final adjustments to her appearance. She had splurged on a new dress for the occasion. It was dark blue silk with delicate lace trim, more fashionable and festive than anything she'd brought from Denver. Her honey brown hair was arranged in an elegant style Mrs. Wilson had helped her create, with a few soft tendrils framing her face. A knock at her door announced Mrs. Wilson. "My dear, you look absolutely beautiful," the landlady declared upon entering. "Mr. Reed won't know what hit him." Clara felt her cheeks warm. "It's a celebration for the whole town, Mrs. Wilson." Mrs. Wilson replied, unconvinced. "And I suppose that's why he's been pacing outside for the past 10 minutes, looking more nervous than a schoolboy at his first dance?" Clara's pulse quickened. "Bruce is here already?" "Indeed he is, and quite transformed. You wouldn't recognize him as the same solemn assayer who's kept to himself these past years." Mrs. Wilson handed Clara a small package. "This came for you this afternoon, by the way. Special delivery from Denver." Clara opened the package to find a velvet jewelry box containing a pair of delicate silver earrings set with small blue stones that matched her dress perfectly. "How lovely!" Mrs. Wilson exclaimed. "Is there a note?" Clara found a small card tucked into the box. "To new beginnings. These reminded me of the spring that brought us together." Bruce. "Well?" Mrs. Wilson prompted, curiosity evident in her voice. "They're from Bruce," Clara admitted, already fastening the earrings. "A New Year's gift." "I thought as much. That man may be quiet, but when he decides to act, he doesn't do things by halves." Downstairs, Bruce waited in the boarding house parlor. He turned as Clara entered, and she immediately noticed the expression that crossed his face. Bruce had transformed. Gone was the stern, remote assayer she'd first met. In his place stood a handsome, confident man in a well-tailored dark suit, his beard neatly trimmed, his face bright with anticipation. "Clara," he said softly, then seemed momentarily at a loss for words. "You look beautiful." "Thank you," she replied, touching one of the earrings. "And thank you for these. They're perfect." "I'm glad you like them. The blue stones are azurite. It's a mineral often found near healing springs." It seemed appropriate. He offered his arm. "Shall we? The whole town is waiting to celebrate with us." The community hall had been transformed for the New Year's Eve celebration. Greenery and ribbons festooned the walls, tables laden with food and drink lined one side, and a small orchestra of local musicians was setting up in the corner. Despite the festive decorations, Clara immediately noticed something different from the Christmas Eve gathering. There was a large table at the front of the hall that displayed maps, drawings, and a sign reading Silver Bell Springs, a new future for Silver Pass. That was the mayor's idea, Bruce explained, following her gaze. He wants everyone to see the plans we've been developing. People began approaching as soon as they entered, offering congratulations and asking questions about the resort. Clara found herself separated from Bruce as different groups pulled them into conversation, but she was constantly aware of his presence across the room, his voice occasionally rising above the general chatter. The evening progressed with speeches, music, and dancing. Mayor Thornton raised a toast to Silver Bell Springs and its founders, declaring it the dawn of a new era for Silver Pass. Dr. Peterson spoke about the potential medical benefits of the mineral waters, citing Sullivan's remarkable recovery as preliminary evidence. When the orchestra struck up a waltz, Bruce appeared at Clara's side. "Would you honor me with a dance, Mrs. Crane?" he asked formally. "I'd be delighted, Mr. Reed," she replied, taking his offered hand. As they moved on to the dance floor, Clara was pleasantly surprised to discover that Bruce danced well, leading her with confidence through the steps of the waltz. His hand at her waist was steady, and she found herself acutely aware of his nearness, of the subtle scent of his shaving soap, of the way his gaze never left hers. "You seem to be full of hidden talents," she remarked. "Expert assayer, skilled woodcarver, and now an accomplished dancer." Sarah insisted I learn. She loved dancing. The mention of his late wife, offered now without the shadow of pain that had accompanied it before, touched Clara. She had good taste. "Yes," Bruce agreed, his gaze intent on Clara's face. "In many things." The music drew to a close, but Bruce kept her hand in his as they moved to the edge of the dance floor. "Would you like to step outside for a moment? It's getting rather warm in here." Clara followed as Bruce guided her through the crowded hall to a side door that opened onto a small porch. Outside, the winter night was clear and cold. Stars scattered like diamonds across the black sky. From somewhere in the distance came the sound of miners celebrating the new year, with rather less decorum than the town gathering. "It's beautiful," Clara said, gazing up at the stars. "I never saw skies like this in Denver." "One of the compensations of living in such a remote place," Bruce agreed, standing close beside her. After a moment, he spoke again, his voice lower. "Clara, there's something I've been wanting to tell you." She turned to face him. "Yes?" "These past 2 weeks, working with you, getting to know you, they've changed me. You've changed me." Bruce's gaze was earnest, vulnerable in a way she hadn't seen before. "For 5 years, I've been existing, not living. Hiding from pain by hiding from everything. But you brought life back to Silver Pass, and somehow you brought it back to me as well." Clara felt tears threatening. "Bruce, I know it may be too soon," he continued quickly. "You're still grieving Jack, and I understand that completely. But I wanted you to know that whatever happens with Silver Bell Springs, whatever you decide about your future here, I am grateful for the gift you've given me. The chance to feel again, to hope again." Clara reached up, touching his face gently. "It's not too soon," she whispered. "Jack will always have a place in my heart, just as Sarah and James will in yours. But hearts have room for new love, for new beginnings. Isn't that what tomorrow is all about?" Bruce's hand covered hers where it rested against his cheek. "New beginnings," he echoed, his voice rough with emotion. Inside the hall, the clock began to strike midnight, and cheers erupted as 1880 arrived in Silver Pass. But on the quiet porch, Bruce and Clara marked the new year in their own way, with a first kiss that held the promise of many more to come. New Year's Day dawned bright and clear, as if the weather itself was celebrating the fresh start. Clara woke early, her mind immediately filled with thoughts of the day ahead. She would officially file her claim renewal and sign the Henderson property deed. Most of all, she would see Bruce again. Their kiss at midnight had changed everything, acknowledging the feelings that had been growing between them since that first expedition to the hot spring. After dressing in a practical but attractive green dress, Clara made her way to the town clerk's office, where she was to meet Bruce. He was already waiting, punctual as always, a portfolio of documents tucked under one arm. "Good morning," he said, his usual reserved manner softened. "Ready for the official business?" "More than ready," Clara replied. The filing process was straightforward. She signed the claim renewal, paying the fee, and received official documentation that the hot spring and surrounding land would remain in Clara's name for another year. The town clerk stamped the papers with satisfying finality, then handed them to Clara with congratulations. Next, the Henderson property, Bruce said as they left the clerk's office. The deed transfer had been prepared beforehand, needing only Clara's signature as the new owner and the payment of the relevant filing fees. As she signed her name, Clara felt a profound sense of achievement. In just a few weeks, she had gone from a desperate widow with only a questionable mining claim to the owner of a promising business and valuable property. "Congratulations, Mrs. Crane," the clerk said, handing her the deed. "You're now one of Silver Pass's largest property owners." Outside on the boardwalk, Clara turned to Bruce. "I can hardly believe it's real. Just a few weeks ago, I was setting up a tent in the snow with nowhere else to go." "You've come a long way," Bruce agreed, his voice gentle. "Though I'd argue it was your determination that got you here, not mere luck or circumstance." Clara tucked the precious documents into her bag. "What happens next?" "Now we turn plans into reality," Bruce offered his arm, "starting with a proper inspection of the Henderson property. Are you ready to see your new acquisition?" They walked through town toward the large house at its eastern edge. The Henderson property was one of the oldest in Silver Pass, built during the initial silver boom by one of the first successful mine owners. The main house was an impressive two-story structure with a wraparound porch and multiple chimneys. Behind it stood the large barn that Bruce had suggested converting into a bathhouse, along with several smaller outbuildings. "It's larger than I imagined," Clara said as they approached. 15 rooms in the main house, plus the barn and servants' quarters," Bruce confirmed, producing a key. "Ezra Henderson built it to impress Eastern investors. Now it will serve an even better purpose." Inside, the house was dusty but sound, with high ceilings, large windows, and elegant woodwork throughout. Clara moved from room to room, envisioning how each space might be used: reception areas, dining rooms, guest accommodations, and treatment rooms. "The kitchen will need modernizing," Bruce noted as they explored the back of the house, "and plumbing throughout for the mineral baths. But the basic structure is excellent." In what had once been the formal parlor, Clara paused before a large bay window that overlooked the mountains. "This would make a perfect relaxation room for guests," she mused. "We could arrange comfortable chairs here, perhaps a small library of books and magazines." "And this could be your office," Bruce suggested, indicating a smaller adjacent room, "with a view of the entire property." Clara turned to him, suddenly overwhelmed by the magnitude of what they were undertaking. "It's going to be an enormous amount of work, Bruce. Renovations, hiring staff, establishing treatment protocols, marketing to potential guests." "Will it be too much?" he asked, studying her face. "No," she replied after a moment. "It will be challenging, certainly. But I believe in this venture, and in us." Bruce's expression softened at her last words. "So do I." He took her hands in his. "Clara, there's something I've been wanting to ask you." Her pulse quickened. "Yes. Would you consider a more formal partnership? Not just for Silver Bell Springs, but—" He hesitated, uncharacteristically uncertain. "I know we've known each other only a short time, but I feel as if I've been waiting my whole life to find you, to find this chance at happiness again." Clara squeezed his hands. "Are you proposing a merger, Mr. Reed?" she asked. Bruce laughed, the sound still new and delightful to Clara's ears. "I suppose I am, in a manner of speaking, though I was hoping for something more personal than a business arrangement." "I accept," Clara said softly, "on one condition." "Name it." "That we don't rush. That we give ourselves time to know each other fully, to be certain." Bruce had that look of understanding. "A proper courtship, then, leading to a more permanent arrangement if all goes well?" "Exactly," Clara agreed, "though I have a strong feeling that all will indeed go very well." Bruce then leaned down to kiss her, sealing their new understanding in the house that would soon become the centerpiece of their shared dream. Valentine's Day, 1880. Steam rose from the hot spring, creating a misty halo in the crisp February air. Around the now cleared pool, pine boughs and red ribbons had been arranged, transforming the natural setting into a wedding bower. Wooden benches, carried up the mountain trail with considerable effort, provided seating for the small gathering of guests who had made the journey from Silver Pass for the occasion. Clara stood within the small tent that had been set up as a changing area, making final adjustments to her appearance. Her wedding gown was simple but elegant. It was ivory silk with delicate lace accents, specially ordered from Denver. Her hair was arranged in a crown of braids intertwined with small white flowers, and around her neck hung a pendant containing a small piece of azurite that matched the earrings Bruce had given her on New Year's Eve. "Ready, my dear?" Mrs. Wilson asked, acting as Clara's attendant for the day. Clara's feelings were too full for words. After 6 weeks of formal courtship, she and Bruce had decided on a Valentine's Day wedding, choosing to exchange their vows beside the hot spring that had brought them together and would soon bring new life to Silver Pass. Construction on Silverbell Springs was already underway. The Henderson house was being renovated room by room, with the first guest accommodations scheduled to open in April. The barn conversion to a bathhouse had begun, with modern plumbing being installed to bring the mineral water directly from the spring through specially designed pipes. Word had spread throughout Colorado and beyond about the miracle water and its healing properties. Advance bookings were already coming in, and Dr. Peterson was developing formal treatment protocols based on his ongoing studies of the 3 miners whose recovery had been so remarkable. But most importantly to Clara was the personal transformation she had seen in Bruce over these past weeks. The solemn, withdrawn man she initially met had gradually become a happy and contented person. He was still serious and thoughtful by nature, but now he was capable of laughter, enthusiasm, and tenderness. He spoke more openly about Sarah and James, sharing memories without the overwhelming guilt that had once haunted him. He had also fully reconnected with the community of Silver Pass, offering his expertise not just to Silverbell Springs, but to various town initiatives. "It's time," Mrs. Wilson said, interrupting Clara's reflections. "Your groom is waiting, and looking quite handsome, I might add." Clara stepped out of the tent. The small gathering rose as she appeared, but Clara had eyes only for Bruce, who stood beside Reverend Thompson near the steaming spring. He was dressed in a new dark blue suit, and his face was clean-shaven for the occasion, his eyes fixed on her with an expression of such love. As Clara walked the short path to join him, she thought of how far they had both come since that snowy December day when she had first knocked on his office door. Each had been broken in their own way, carrying grief and fear like shields against further pain. But together they had found healing. In the hot spring, yes, but more importantly, in each other's courage, determination, and capacity for new love. Bruce took her hands as she reached him. "You're beautiful," he whispered for her ears alone. Reverend Thompson began the ceremony, speaking eloquently about new beginnings and the healing power of love. When it came time for their vows, Bruce and Clara had each prepared their own words. Bruce spoke first, his voice steady despite the emotion evident in his face. "Clara, when you came to Silver Pass, I had resigned myself to a half-life of work and solitude. I thought that chapter of my life that included love and joy was closed forever. But you showed me that the heart, like the earth itself, contains hidden springs of renewal waiting to be discovered. I promise to cherish every day with you, to honor the past we both carry while building a future filled with purpose and joy, and to love you with the fullness of a heart that you helped restore." Clara blinked back tears as she began her own vows. "Bruce, I came to Silver Pass following one dream, only to find another far more precious. In you, I found not just a partner for a business venture, but a partner for life, a man of integrity, compassion, and quiet strength. I promise to walk beside you in all seasons and to nurture the love that has grown between us like a healing spring. I promise to face whatever challenges life brings with the courage and faith we found together." They exchanged simple gold bands, and when Reverend Thompson pronounced them husband and wife, Bruce kissed Clara with a tenderness that spoke volumes about the journey they had taken together. The small wedding party made their way back down the mountain trail to Silver Pass, where a celebration awaited in the partially renovated main hall of what would soon be Silverbell Springs Health Resort. The townspeople had gone all out with decorations, food, and music, turning the Valentine's Day wedding into a community celebration of new beginnings for all. Later that evening, as the celebration continued around them, Clara and Bruce slipped away to the porch for a moment of quiet together. The night was clear and cold. Stars were bright and brilliant above the mountains. "What are you thinking?" Bruce asked, his arm warm around her waist. Clara leaned against him, content in a way she had never expected to feel again. "I'm thinking about how different my life is from what I imagined when I arrived here 2 months ago. I was so focused on proving Jack right about the hot spring, on finding financial security. And now I understand that the true value of his discovery wasn't the mineral water itself, but where it led me. To Silver Pass, to this community." She turned in his arms to face him. "To you." Bruce brushed a gentle kiss across her forehead. "I was just thinking," he said softly. "They called him Lucky Jack, but maybe his greatest bit of luck was having a wife who refused to give up on his dream, long after everyone else had." "Including a certain skeptical assayer?" Clara teased. "Especially him," Bruce agreed, though in fairness, he had no idea what that dream would lead to. "And now that dream belongs to both of us," Clara said. "Silver Bell Springs, a place of healing, of renewal." "Like the spring that inspired it," Bruce murmured, drawing her closer, bringing life and warmth even in the coldest circumstances. As they sealed this truth with a kiss, Clara knew with absolute certainty that she had found her true home, not in a place or a business venture, but in the arms of the man who had helped her transform Jack's final claim into something far more valuable than either of them could have imagined. A new beginning, wrapped in the warmth of love rediscovered. The end.